All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with week two. We're sorry for the technical difficulties and for the late start, but we are here now and ready to roll. So let's take a recap of week one. I don't know if we want to go through line by line of all the guys that we had, but why don't we at least, Alex, you tell us about your success because I know you're ready and waiting to talk about it.
I wasn't really gonna brag, but if you're gonna make me,
Humble brag. Go ahead.
Julio, the end. I mean, I had Julio, I had Jordan Matthews, I had Woodhead, Ivory. It was a good day. It was a very, very good day. The only problem though, I went against my own advice, and in my cash game, when I flipped out Woodhead, I was like, oh, I should probably upgrade my tight end position just to be safe. I put Olsen in over Eifert, and I had Eifert in my lineup.
That's I I sigh because that's exactly what I did. I
Yeah,
took way too much Olsen exposure because I was like, oh, they're not going to throw to literally anybody else because who are they going to throw to? Jericho Cotry?
dude, I
Yes,
was
that's who they're
so
going to throw
mad.
to.
I was so mad at myself. Like I was freaking out until the Monday game started because I didn't think I was gonna win because of that. And then
Yes.
Julio did what Julio does, and I was okay.
Yeah, Julio just flat out destroyed. He made Maxwell kind of look like we all thought he would, right? Because, I don't know. I personally, when they signed him in the offseason, was kind of like, well, he's more than likely a product of that system, right? He had all pros all around him in Seattle. He goes to Philly. What's going to happen, right? No Richard Sherman on the other side, no Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas behind you.
Dude, just speaking
You
of
just get burned.
Sherman though, like I saw Sherman get burnt like a couple of times this week.
Really.
Yeah.
I don't think I really paid attention, but
I saw at least one where he got beat like towards the sideline or in the end zone and he just got beat bad.
yeah, well, good. I hope there's more of that because I'm sick and tired of seeing not only him but that entire team.
All right, you know
Sick
what?
and tired of
Actually,
seeing
just
all of
'cause
them.
I feel like we're not gonna have a chance to talk about this yet later today in the show. Dan Quinn's defense in Atlanta, they suck, but he made them look real good. And I think that Dan Quinn was a lot of the reasoning for success in Seattle and not so much the players now, just because I know how bad the Atlanta unit was before Dan Quinn got there and how good they looked against Philly's offense for most of the game last night.
Yeah,
Scheme, scheme, scheme.
it's all about it, man. I mean, got to prepare and you prepare right. But week one is kind of like I don't know. Everything was kind of a toss up, right? There was like who saw? I mean, some people, yeah, they predicted Carlos Hyde was going to have a really good game, but to be the best running back of the week, I didn't see that coming.
Y'all gonna learn today.
Yeah, apparently, I think we have some learning to do by the according to one Alex Henowitz. So I'm going to try something really quick here. And I think in order to get some better streaming, I gotta turn my video off for you, Alex. So let's just get that going. I apologize. Now you have to talk like you're talking into a mirror, but
Dude, I hate you
hey man.
so much right now.
Hey man, it's all right. You know what? Let's dive right into the picks then. Let's go. Quarterbacks, week two, value picks,
I can't
quarterback.
see anything. I don't have the stream up because you still haven't sent it out. So I have to. All right, I have to follow along on my own. All right, where are we starting?
We are on Carson Palmer. I apologize if the stream isn't out. I will go ahead and do that shortly. And let's talk about Carson Palmer here. He is for week two heading into Chicago, at Chicago for DraftKings. He's at 6,900, FanDuel 7,800. He threw for 300 yards and 3 TDs against a beat up and injured Saints defense, which we all, we mentioned him last week, I believe. We all kind of saw him doing really well, maybe not that well, but we saw him doing well against the Saints. You really think they're a Super Bowl contender with Carson under center?
They were a Super Bowl contender last year with Carson under center. I don't see how that changes this year. If he's healthy,
If he's
with
healthy,
that,
yeah, they
with
don't have
that
to rely on.
behind him and the playmakers he has at wide receiver, yeah, they're a Super Bowl contender. Because without him, they went 11-5. Can you imagine what they could do in the regular season and in the playoffs with him? They almost beat Carolina without a quarterback in the playoffs last year. They're a good football team.
They are. I'm not denying that. I don't know. I don't know if I really want to call out Super Bowl contenders in week one, right?
No,
I
I'm
think
just
they've got a
saying,
lot
like,
of people
you're gonna base
missing.
it off of like a continuation of last year. Like, they're a Super Bowl contender.
They've got a lot of people
Super Bowl
missing
contender.
from that uh, from that defense. I don't know if we can just call out Carson as being the missing piece when you lose Cromartie across from Patrick Peterson there. You do get back Tyrann Mathieu, who had a great game, but I don't know.
Let's be 100% real on Cromartie, and I love him. I'm a Jets fan, and he's back with the Jets. The man can't cover anything. I'm sure he was better in Arizona, but he's so bad at coverage. He really is. So, like, I don't know if that's the biggest loss in the world for them.
He's also injured, yes?
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't tear his MCL or his ACL. It's just a sprained knee. But, yeah, he's going to be out for a little bit.
All right. Give me a second to share out the link
Hopefully
here.
my boy, the Cinnamon Badger, gets to play. Mr. Dexter McDougal.
All right, so I believe I just put the link out there. And
Yay!
There we are. So I apologize again to those of you just getting tuned in a little late, or if you're listening or watching to this after we tape, I apologize for having to deal with this. Technical difficulties that you'll just come to know and love from this podcast and show, so don't worry about it. Let's move on. Tyrod Taylor of the Bills. He's going to go up against New England this week. 6,200 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. He only threw for 195 on this past Sunday, but he did throw a touchdown to Percy Harvin. However, what you do like about him is his mobility, right? Nine carries for 41 rushing yards. I didn't watch the whole game, admittedly, so I don't know if a lot of those were scripted runs or escaping the pocket, but he will have success. I agree with you here, Alex. He will have success if he limits the turnovers, right? He needs to make sure that he can control the ball, which going 14 for 19 clearly looks like he did. You say he needs to get Watkins involved to see his true ceiling, but I mean, he did pretty well with Percy, pretty much Percy alone, it seemed, right? So what do you want out of Watkins?
I don't mean as like winning games ceiling. I mean from a fantasy perspective. Like if he wants to like
No, I know.
put up some big games, like he needs to get Watkins in the game. Like he is. If think about it, like people are kind of down on Watkins just because he was boomer bust last year and obviously didn't do anything this week going up against Vontae. But Watkins was the number one picked wide receiver in the best wide receiver class of ever, pretty much last year. So I still think that he's one of the best. He could probably be one of the best receivers in the game. He just needs to be utilized. And Rex doesn't like to throw the ball. He knew Vontae was on the other side. They were like, you know what? We don't need to throw it to Sam, and we'll just run the ball. It's fine. And it worked because their defense was outstanding. So I think going forward, Tyrod needs to get Watkins more involved. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of be that one-dimensional offense with occasional play-action throws. But Tyrod's good. My cautionary tale for the not cautionary tale, but my caution for this week would be Bill Belichick loves going up against inexperienced quarterbacks, and that's definitely something that I would be a little scared about, at least in terms of Taylor for cash games at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not recommending you go out there and grab him in cash games. I don't know if it's going to be a long time till I can recommend that, but I think he is a weekly GPP play for sure, especially at this price. But while you're talking about upside with his arm, I'm more thinking upside with his leg. I'm more looking at kind of like a Cam type of upside game where he's going to only throw for maybe 200, 250 and 2 touchdowns right at the most, but he may run for 80 yards and a score as well. And that's what you're not going to get from everybody else. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about his upside for a GPP. So again, going against that New England defense this weekend, They're at
I
home, yeah.
just,
They're in
I just want to
Buffalo
say, like,
again.
I feel like you and a lot of other people are underrating like the value of this guy's arm. Like he can throw the ball. He can put up 300 yards if he uses Watkins occasionally. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen this week, but he's a guy that can do that and get the
He
rushing stats. Like we're
he's
looking at a
got
guy
work to
that
do.
has
He's got work to do
like
before he's
a,
throwing 300 yards consistently, and that's not just get Watkins involved. I mean, he's not a great pocket passer.
no, he's not great, but with the weapons he has, like he has a good deep ball. He's got weapons like Harvin and Watkins, and we're gonna ignore Shady, but like Carlos Williams and running backs that can get the ball and add those rushing yards, like we saw with Sam Bradford last night. A lot of his yards came from the running backs. He's gonna get those extra yards. That's basically like a running play, but adds to the stats. Like I could see him not consistently, but I can see him putting up 300-yard games.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Marcus Mariota. Tennessee at Cleveland this upcoming weekend. He's now 6,000 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. He threw the ball 16 times, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns. Everybody go crazy. I agree with you here that everyone needs to take a page out of the Aaron Rodgers playbook and relax. It was an amazing feat throwing for 4 touchdowns, especially in one half, but who'd you play, right? I mean, what, do you really think he's going to repeat this? I'm guessing no.
I don't think so. Like I kind of talked about last week. Like I don't love Mariota as a prospect. Like I just don't. Um, I don't think he like I know he's accurate, but I don't see him throwing like I don't like the ball he throws. If that makes sense. Like Rivers throws an ugly ball. Like he throws it ugly, but it gets to where it needs to go. Mariota, I don't see that full like I can take over a game with my arm feel. And like Tyrod, he's gonna have those extra rushing yards, but I just think that he's gonna be a product of what his receivers make for him, as opposed to him really doing anything with his arm. Plus, he played basically the worst team in football. So let's pump the brakes on Mariota and him being amazing. Because if you guys don't remember, a couple years ago, RG3 had a much better rookie year than Luck, and we all see how that turned out. So pump the brakes. He's still not safe, and I'm still not ready to anoint him as even a good quarterback yet.
Good, good. Now, here's someone that I think you're a little too ready to anoint as a good quarterback, but I'm going to put him out there anyway. Your boy Fitzy, Fitzmagic as you like to call him. Jets at the Colts this weekend. DraftKings, he's sitting at only 5,500. FanDuel only 6,700. He only threw for 179, but he did throw 2 touchdowns. The height of his receivers, you think, is going to play a huge part here? Is that because he's so inaccurate?
See, all right, like I'm not overly in love with Fitzpatrick as a play in DraftKings or cash or whatever, but he's got a better situation than he did last year, and I think he's capable of putting up big games just because the defense isn't going to lose him games, and he's not going to be forced into these really bad shootouts. He's going to be able to throw the ball to big receivers in Marshall
Decker.
and Decker.
Yeah.
Ivory's going to keep him in the game running the ball. So I'm not going to say that it has tons and tons of upside every week or that it's safe, but for his price, he's a solid play because he has good receivers that are going to help him get those yards. Like yesterday, 2 days ago, Marshall ripping the interception back away to gain Fitzpatrick a touchdown pass a few plays later. Like his wide receivers are going to work hard for him, and they're very, very good.
So I agree that the receivers, including Marshall, because Marshall is an absolute beast, but seeing Fitzpatrick throw the pick and Marshall steal one back ain't gonna happen, probably ever again. I mean, yeah, I think Fitzpatrick he's a good bet to kind of repeat what he did this week, right? He's a good bet to not have a lot of yards, maybe a couple touchdowns, but also you're worried about the interception, potentially a fumble. Um, I don't know. Again, I'm not comfortable with him in a cash game. I don't know if you're really recommending him for a cash game. I think you said you
No,
weren't, but
I'm not.
it's I don't know. I'm hesitant
I
even
think
to
he
use him in a
he
GPP. I
definitely
see his upside, but me personally, I'm hesitant to use him in a
right.
GPP.
And he has upside this week just because he's going up against Indy and their defense is really bad. But I think Ivory has more upside, and we'll get to him later.
Yes, we will. I was a big fan of Ivory this weekend. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the next quarterback here. We've got Nick Foles. He's at the Redskins this week. He's sitting at a cool 5Gs on DraftKings, 6,500 on FanDuel. He almost threw for 300 yards and a touchdown against the Seahawks D. Is that 2 fumbles lost and 11 yards rushing, but he did get a touchdown as well. You clearly see him improving this weekend, but how much is he going to improve, right? We thought Tannehill was going to run wild and throw wild, and Lamar Miller was going to run wild all over the Dolphins, and we saw or all over the Redskins, and we saw how that worked out. So
Well,
it makes you have more faith in Foles than Tannehill.
I don't necessarily think that he's going to do better than he did last week. He had a great game last week. He's going to hit value with what he did, and I just think he has. If he's able to do what he did to Seattle's defense, like he can do that to other teams, and he has the weapons. He has Benny Cunningham showed up pretty big. Tavon Austin, wherever he came from this week, I did not see that coming at all. And he gets Brian Quick back this week, and Brian Quick is probably his best receiver. I feel like he's pretty safe if you want to go really cheap at quarterback, even in a cash game, and save money for other people. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but he's cheap. You can use him. I think there was a stat I saw earlier. He was like 7 of 8 on throws 15 yards down the field, and the Seahawks didn't even give up 7 completions of 15 yards last year. So he had a great game against a great secondary, and I think with that defense keeping him in the game kind of like fits, but he has more upside, and we've seen that in Philly.
So I kind of touched on it with my rant earlier. I don't think that secondary is great, especially not right now when they lost a DB. They lost one cornerback to, I don't know, a free agency, and they have another one sitting out, right? They have a stud safety sitting out.
So it's a good defense. I mean, I'm
a
sure
good defense, but not a great secondary, right? I mean, I'll be very, very interested, and obviously I'm biased here because I'm a huge Packers fan. I'll be very interested to see what Aaron Rodgers can do against that secondary after seeing Nick Foles put that up. That's my take on their secondary right now. I mean, I'm not saying Rodgers is going to throw the ball through the roof, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Browns and Johnny Football taking on Mariota and the Titans, sitting at 5,200 on DraftKings, 6,500 on FanDuel. We saw him come in a little late in the game. Was it second quarter he came in?
Yeah, it was early. I don't remember exactly, but it was after McCown tried to run for a touchdown and we knocked him out of the game.
Yeah, that was an awesome hit. But he ended up throwing for 182 yards.
Shane Falco at the line, like spinorama, but he didn't get in any.
Except he dropped the ball and got concussed. So 182 yards in the air, which not great, but that Jets D is, I think, much better than Tennessee. He ended up throwing for that touchdown, which we saw later. Cromartie got hurt. Also threw for an interception, had 2 fumbles. But did run the ball, right? 35 yards on the ground with his legs. As you note here, he can make plays on his own. He can only do that for a certain amount of time, though, because eventually, and I'm guessing that can happen very quickly, the defensive coordinators are going to make him pass the ball, right? They're going to spy him or contain him and say, go ahead, beat us with your arm. Now, with this poor supporting cast, how do you suggest he does it?
I have no idea. This is entirely a tournament, maybe upside play, just because we know what kind of upside he has, at least from college. He's going to run the ball. He's basically going to have to be Tyrod Taylor with higher passing, but he has a lot worse weapons to deal with. Like he has, Crowell looked terrible. Duke Johnson looked okay. Hartline was Bo's not going to play. Travis Benjamin had the one long touchdown, but I think Cromartie fell. So I don't know. A lot of things need to break right for him to really do well, but don't even pretend to play him in a cash game.
Okay. I'm very glad that you clarified that because I agree 100%. He is. I mean, I'm also personally staying away from him in GPPs. I just don't see him as being reliable for anything or even having that much upside yet until he has somebody to throw the ball. Last year, I was heavy on him, but that was really because of Josh Gordon, right? It was like, okay, he can throw the ball up to Mike Evans in college. He can throw it up to Josh Gordon. And now that he's not there, I mean, I don't see it, right? I don't see Brian Hartline. I don't see these guys over there really making a big impact for him. So that's my take on him. He is cheap. He is a starter. So, take that for what it's worth. Always a GPP play, especially at that price. Moving on to our next guy, Ryan Mallett, taking on the Carolina defense this weekend. 5,100 in DraftKings, 6,500 in FanDuel. Threw for under 100 yards, but did get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion against the Kansas City defense. He ran the ball for 6 yards. I don't know why you even put that there.
Dude, because it's part of his stat line. I just put it.
Because he could fall over, and that's 6 yards. The guy's huge.
Think about it. He only played a little over a quarter. It shows he has mobility if he needs to use it.
I know. I'm going to disagree with you, but I will agree that he is better than Hoyer, right? Him and Hopkins can definitely help each other out. Totally agree with your notes there. Hopkins speedy. Mallett has a massive arm that Hoyer doesn't. I like it a lot. Tell me more. What else should I like about him other than being able to get Hopkins a little bit more value?
He has a much better arm, for one. He has a rocket for an arm. That was part of the reason why the Patriots drafted him in the first place and developed him. He's a good, solid in the pocket, mostly quarterback with more athleticism than you think he has. And I just think that letting Mallett and Hopkins grow together, as opposed to just having Hoyer pretend to throw the ball to Hopkins, I think it's just a much better decision.
Okay.
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
Pete's here.
I can hear Pete, but I can't see him, and I do apologize to people on the live stream that can't see anything right now. I am trying to bring in our man Pete the Greek. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I couldn't before, so why would that mean I can now? There he is. All right, let's see if we can get you in here. Oh, you left. I don't see you anymore.
Give me just a second. I'll have it up and running.
All righty. So while you do that, let's let the folks at home see our running back list. We're going to move on to running back. So, Pete, you came just in time to catch the end of the quarterbacks. Let's move on there. So, Alex, we'll toss it to you for Carlos Hyde, DraftKings 5,100, FanDuel 7,000. Like I said earlier in my rant, best running back of the week in week one. I don't know if that's more attributed to him, the defense, kind of both, because he is a stud. I'll say that, having been run over him since college. He's a stud. Hit the B button just like his buddy Braxton Miller up at OSU still. Go ahead, say your line.
Y'all gonna learn today. Yo, Carlos Hyde, we talked about him all year last year about how he should have taken over for Gore. And then when everything happened all offseason, they lost. We talked about last week, they lost so many players on offense and on defense. We kind of just forgot about Hyde and forgot that he was going to be the bell cow back. Then Reggie Bush hurt his calf, and then all the balls went to Hyde. And Hyde just took over the game last night. Completely overshadowed Adrian Peterson's reemergence.
I'll agree. He clearly did that because he outperformed Adrian Peterson by about 80 times in terms of total yardage. It was pretty impressive. I gotta say, it was also impressive with that San Francisco defense after losing, what seemed like four all pros, right? I mean, they lost a whole ton of people and they still shut down the Vikings. Kudos to them. I hope they don't do it all season because I'm sick of seeing it already. So kudos to them, but let's hope that stops going forward. I do think, though, this Pittsburgh defense isn't what it once was. It's not our father's Steelers. I think that Hyde can definitely have another good game against them. I don't know if he's hitting a buck 70, but can definitely do some damage against that somewhat suspect defense right now. Let's go on to the G-Men. Pete the Greek, why don't you take it here? We got Rashad Jennings at 5K on DraftKings. He's 6,400 on FanDuel. And Shane Vereen at 4,200 on DraftKings, 6,200 on FanDuel. Jennings had 52 yards and a touchdown. Also got one target on over 13 carries. Sorry, I didn't mention that. Vereen had 3 carries for only 14, but 5 targets out of the backfield, which ended up with 4 catches for 46 yards. Alex's note here says that Eli needs to find these guys more than he did in week 1 in order to really get his true success. Do you think they have a chance at more success than they had against this Dallas defense this past week, since they'll be at the Falcons this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, I do. I think actually I like Vereen fairly well in DraftKings. You said he was only 4,200, right? And he's their pass catching back, so that's very good value for Vereen. I actually own Jennings in a couple leagues. Unfortunately, I was sort of desperate at running back, and I think this is a week where I'm not too ashamed to play him. I think this is a week where he's clearly established as the goal line back. He got all the goal line carries. I think there was, in fact, only one of them. I watched most of that game, and it went right to him, and he converted. So there's always the touchdown factor. Atlanta can be run on. If you look at what Darren Sproles did to them last week, he's one where I would make the comparison of Vereen. He's the passing down back. He'll get carries in surprise scenarios. So I do like Vereen quite a bit in DraftKings. I think he's good value. Jennings, again, you play him, you're going for a touchdown. The problem with Jennings for me is that in FanDuel, he's at 6,400, and guess who else is at 6,400? Alex Hanowitz's boyfriend, Amir Abdullah. So I'm playing him over Rashad Jennings for sure. So the problem to me on FanDuel is there's a value that I like better there, so I probably won't end up finding him in any lineups, but I think he's a good touchdown play. And I mean, I think if you're going to use a Rashad Jennings, this is a good week to do so.
Okay. I'm just going to update you guys because I'm not sure if you're on the live stream as well, but I can barely get both of your faces in for some reason. So I apologize for that again. Lots of technical difficulties. We're trying some new stuff this year. Hopefully it ends up improving this total experience for all the viewers more than it hurts. But right now it's just painful, and I know Alex is holding in his expletives that he wants to throw my way. So we'll hopefully not hear those until later on tonight. But let's move on to the next running back. We'll let Alex take this one since it's his other boyfriend, Chris Ivory, again at the Colts. We talked about Fitzmagic earlier. Ivory sitting at 4,700 on DraftKings and 6,900 on FanDuel. I don't know how DraftKings only increased him $600 this week. He almost ran for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, had that catch on the one target with 9 yards. I mean, he's going against the worst defense, and especially a worst run defense. Talk to me, Alex. Why? He's got to be a lock in every single lineup of yours this weekend, right?
Yeah, pretty much. He was a monster this week. I obviously watched the entire game. Just had Red Zone on in the corner and had the game on. He looked exactly as advertised all offseason. People keep making, like I said last week, people thought, what's it called? That he looked like a human version of Beast Mode, and he really did look like that. Like, he was breaking tackles. He had basically 2 touchdown runs in a row. He got the hold on Brandon Marshall, kept one of them, but 2 in a row, he just 10 yards out, just nobody could touch him. He's a monster, and Indy can't stop the run. Like, we saw that against Buffalo all week, and especially if they're going up against a good defense that can at least contain their passing game. Ivory's going to get the ball, and he is the bell cow back. Powell only really saw the ball at the end of the game when it was the game was completely out of reach, and only occasionally saw like a couple third down plays, but Ivory was pretty much in there all 3 downs and even caught a pass. And I think he probably would have been targeted more if it was a closer game.
I can definitely agree with you on that. He's clearly a beast, and beast mode 2.0, right down to the hair. He looks every bit the part. He runs angry. We all love it. I gotta say, it's fun to even just watch him, right? Fantasy aside, it's fun to just watch him run and watch him just barrel over guys, which I'm pretty sure you're happy about as well. So let's check out our next running back. Pete mentioned him before, Amir Abdullah coming at the Vikings, sitting at 4,500 on DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. He only had 7 carries for 50 yards, but he did get a touchdown on his first carry. He also had 4 catches on each target for 44 receiving yards. Hope he played the 4s in the lotto that night. Alex says that Joik doesn't have a prayer of being used more than he was this past weekend. Pete, do you agree with that?
It was more meant to be. He doesn't have a prayer of being used more than Amir in the future.
Oh, more than Amir. Okay.
But also true, because I mean, I think he saw like 18 snaps or something, and Amir only saw like 21, and he did what he did on his, and Joik did nothing. So.
Okay. Pete?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, Abdullah also led the team in touches. I mean, when you combine carries and catches, Abdullah led the team. I think Alex is right. I think as the year moves on, he gets more and more involved in the offense. Look, we just saw what Carlos Hyde did to the Vikings, right? And I don't think that necessarily the Vikings have all that much bigger of a downfield threat than the Lions do. In fact, I'd prefer the Lions offense as a whole. So I think Amir Abdullah is a very strong play again this week. His price on DraftKings is fairly criminal, I would say. I mean, you're getting a starting running back who's going to catch passes, who's an explosive player. I think he's a definite start this week for me.
Yeah, it's. I agree. Kind of like the Chris Ivory syndrome here, right? I mean, it depends though, because as of right now, as far as I see it, he's still a backup, right? So we'll have to see if and when he actually gets.
Well, a backup in name only. I mean, if you look at usage, he's not a backup, right?
For now, yep. I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you with that. Yeah. And
I also like that DraftKings kind of came out with their prices like mid game 1 last night, and basically a couple people jumped up like for huge week 1 games. Like Eifert jumped up 700, and a few people jumped up like $600 or $700. But other than that, like everybody pretty much stayed around the same. So we kind of have all like whatever you felt early in the season before the season started about a player, and it started to come through. Like you get to really just roll with that moving along. So people that were good last week are also still going to be good plays as long as the matchup's right, the same way it was last week.
I hear you. And this week against the Minnesota Vikings, I mean, like we said, they just gave up, almost 200 yards to Carlos Hyde. So I would say the matchup is very right this week. Let's go on to the next one. My boy, who was I don't remember, Alex, if we spoke about him last week, but he was a last-minute addition for me on pure volume alone, and that definitely paid off. He's now 4,400 on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel. I'm talking about Benny Cunningham. He travels to the Redskins this weekend. 16 rushes for 45 yards. So you look at that, not even 3 yards a carry, right? That's pretty crappy. But he's also getting targets out of the backfield. 7 targets, 4 catches for 77 yards. Assuming Trey Mason is still out, has that hamstring injury, we obviously won't know for another couple of days for sure what's going on there, Pete. We saw what the Skins did against Lamar Miller. We all had high hopes for Lamar Miller. I got burned by him too. But do you think Benny Cunningham can kind of repeat this since he's catching these balls out of the backfield?
Well, okay, the first thing we have to know, you got to keep an eye on this because of Trey Mason's status, right? The rumor was, the reports were that he did try warming up. He did get out on the field and give it a shot, give it a go last week. Wasn't ready, felt he wasn't ready to go. So you got to keep an eye on that. Now, assuming Mason is out, Cunningham is an interesting play. I would say it was more what Joe Philbin did to Lamar Miller than anything the Redskins came up with. That was a game plan. And I don't think St. Louis is necessarily going to repeat that and just go pass, pass, pass. Although Nick Foles actually looked, I'm ashamed to admit this, kind of all right. I think assuming Trey Mason is out, again, Cunningham is a good play. Look, I'm sure all of our listeners know this. You've heard me say it a million times. These are both PPR formats, half point and full point. And as a result of that, running backs who catch passes and get touches in the running game, like Benny Cunningham, are good plays. I like him again. This is a player who I like a little more on DraftKings than I do FanDuel. I think the full point PPR gives him a little bit of a bump, plus he's a lower price. So, yeah, I think he's definitely usable. Again, keeping an eye on the Trey Mason scenario.
Yes, big caveat there, because if Trey Mason comes back, obviously I don't even think he's going to see 10 carries, let alone 16. So right there with you on that caveat. Moving on to our next guy, David Johnson, Cardinals at the Bears this weekend. 4,200 on DraftKings, 6,600 on FanDuel. He did not get a single rush, even though Andre Ellington got hurt. He did have 2 targets for 1 catch and 55 yards, right? That was his only touch all game. 55-yard catch for a touchdown. So, if you played him in a GPP, cool. Congratulations, good luck. But I'm hesitating with you here, Alex, when you say CJ, whatever K is terrible. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. But according to the Cardinals coaching staff, I'm pretty sure CJ is getting the starting snaps now, and not David Johnson.
I think I want to talk about him more as just like a watch what happens kind of thing, because Chris Johnson's terrible, and once Arians figures it out, I feel like towards the end of the game, Johnson's going to start getting the rock a little bit more, get some catches out of the backfield, and he's going to start being trusted. I think the only reason that CJ was picked up in the first place and is starting this week is just because Johnson missed a lot of time in training camp, and he really needs to get up to speed with what's going on in the offense, and Arians doesn't fully trust him yet, so that's the only reason that David's not starting. David has tons and tons and tons more talent than Chris Johnson, but until CJ looks terrible like he did last year for the Jets, he's going to stay in the game, and I think that might actually happen pretty quickly. I don't really recommend playing him this week, but I just wanted to bring him up just to kind of bring attention to this backfield, because if Ellington's out for a little while, Johnson's going to be the guy that benefits the most.
Okay. Pete, any thought there? I just curious as to what you think.
Unfortunately, we have a very unfortunate fantasy scenario of a very stubborn coach holding back a very talented player. You actually see this at least once a year in fantasy, where you'll get the free David Johnson T-shirts coming out real soon. I think this week I'm still avoiding him. I think you have to take Arians at his word. There was a quote, something along the lines of, you don't want to just throw the rookie into the fire. Rookies have to earn it. We hear a lot of that sort of rhetoric. But look, Bruce Arians is going to realize sooner rather than later that Chris Johnson sucks. He's got nothing left. So I don't want to really jump the gun and play David Johnson this week. I don't want to put my chips in early, or whatever the phrase may be. But I do think Alex is right. In the next week or two, you're going to be using a lot of David Johnson, and we're going to see Chris Johnson take a back seat.
Okay. I am hoping now that people can actually see everybody, but if not, please let me know. Let's see. On to our next running back, Danny Woodhead. Chargers at the Bengals this weekend. 4,200 on DraftKings, 6,200 on FanDuel. He clearly paid off for those like Alex that played him this weekend. 2 touchdowns on 42 yards rushing. Did get 7 targets as well coming out of the backfield. 4 catches for 20 yards. Alex, I didn't see the game. Did those rushes come in the red zone? Was he basically their red zone back now?
Yeah. He was in 2013 with a healthy Ryan Matthews, and he's going to be in 2015 with a rookie Melvin Gordon. He's the red zone guy, and he's the third down guy, which means he's going to get targets, receptions, and red zone opportunities. So he's going to lead the running backs in touchdowns this year for the San Diego Chargers, and he's also going to lead them in targets and receptions by a long shot.
But this Bengals defense is going to be a lot different than that Lions defense. You still think he can put up similar numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I know it was late in the game, but they did give up 2 touchdowns to the fullback Marcel Reese. But it's gonna be a closer game. Rivers knows that he needs to use Woodhead. He's gonna open up the game with the pass. He's gonna free up some space for Woodhead and Gordon. They're hoping Gordon does a little bit better rushing the ball, but either way, if they succeed on offense, Woodhead is going to get those opportunities. To get 7 targets on a running back that only costs you 4,000, I'll take that every week by itself.
Okay, I mean, I agree, right? I like the passing the being those two things, right? Being the third down back and being the red zone back. You can't really ask for much more, especially at that $4,200 price tag, right? I mean, that's pretty silly. We'll move on to our final running back duo, I believe, of the night. Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles. We saw them outperform DeMarco Murray from a yards perspective last night. Matthews sits at 3,600 on DraftKings, 57 on FanDuel. He only ran for 4 yards, but he did get a touchdown. He also caught 3 balls for 24 yards. Sproles, $100 cheaper on each site, 35 and 56 for Sproles on DraftKings and FanDuel, respectively. Went for five rushes for 50 yards, though. Also caught 7 balls for 76 yards. They will get touches every week. You're absolutely right. But, Pete, do you think they'll get that many touches? I mean, they have 8 rushes between them and 13 passing targets between them. Are we expecting the same type of breakdown?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to expect. That's sort of the problem with playing the Eagles is you don't know what breakdown to expect. I think that's a generally good guide, but the game was a little unusual. They were playing from behind most of the game, so I'm not sure what to expect moving forwards. I will say this. If I have to play an Eagles running back, I think it's probably Sproles just because I like the value. I like the pass catching. He did look pretty good in the runs that he did receive. And Dallas, not exactly the stoutest defense in the world. They're not terrible, but you can get yards against them on the ground. So I think if I picked somebody, it's going to be Sproles, who actually looked pretty good. And I'm leaving Matthews sort of on the bench, and I'm probably not playing Murray because he's priced too high for the amount of work he's getting.
Yeah, Sproles looked awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And he got 9 targets. Same thing with
Right.
as Woodhead. I'd rather play him more of a tournament. I wouldn't really play him in cash just because Chip Kelly and the usage. But a guy that's going to get me 9 targets at that price, I'll gladly play.
That's what I'm getting at. Yes.
Cash playing Sproles and Matthews as my 2 running backs in one lineup this week. I put them in and just didn't think about it and just stacked up a wide receiver.
I don't think that's a ridiculous play at all, but I also would not be surprised if week 1 was Sproles' best game of the year. That wouldn't really shock me either. I think Philly's still trying to figure out the best way to use all of their weapons. Look at all of the new talent they have on offense this year. You've got Aguilar, you've got DeMarco Murray, you've got Ryan Matthews, you've got Sam Bradford. They're putting it all together. So it doesn't surprise me that Sproles had a nice week 1. I guess in retrospect, you could have seen that coming. I don't know how it's going to all break down moving forwards. I do know if I'm using a Philly running back this week, it's Sproles.
I think I'm with you there because you're right. He is that continuous piece, right? That one cog and Jordan Matthews for that kind of same comment, right? They're those cogs that actually move forward with experience in the system. So hindsight's always 20/20, but yeah, you could have seen him having a pretty decent game because you knew he was going to be where he needed to be. He was familiar with the system. Good, very good comment there, Pete. And that's it for running backs. Let's move on to receivers really quickly. We are about 45 minutes into the show, and wow, we've still got a lot to go, so let's speed it up. John Brown going at the Bears. We basically like the entire Arizona offense, it seems like this week.
Yep.
DraftKings 5,100, FanDuel 6,200. He had 7 targets, but 4 catches for 46 and a touchdown. I didn't see Floyd's stats from targets, so how did he surpass Floyd, Alex?
I think it was just in general, like Floyd wasn't really targeted. I can look at his. I think he only had 1 catch. He might have had 2 targets. Let me look that up real quick. But John Brown has been the apple of Carson's eye. Like ever since he came last year, he kind of took him under his wing. Then he got hurt. They lived together this season. Like he's the guy that he wants, and he's also the same type of receiver like we talked about last week. The same type of receiver that Arians loves to have in his offense. And Michael Floyd had the one target for an 18-yard catch. So Floyd, maybe it's because of the injury and missing time, but I think even before that, Brown was already starting to surpass him. Last year, Fitzgerald made a comment about Floyd not really wanting to be the guy, and he's done the exact opposite with Brown this offseason. So I think Brown is the guy that they really want to build this offense around going forward once Larry Fitzgerald is out of town, more so than Floyd. And I think Carson loves him, and he's going to throw him the ball week in and week out.
I agree with you. Everything you said, spot on. I really have nothing to add because, well, let's move on. All right, next receiver, Kendall Wright, going again at the Browns. DraftKings 5K, FanDuel 6,100. He had 4 catches on 4 targets last week, 101 yards and a touchdown. He had that one real nice long touchdown pass. Alex notes here that he can make Mariota's short throws long gains. I'm hesitant to say yes on that. I know that we saw that on the long touchdown pass, but Pete, you agree with that? Can he consistently make his short throws long gains?
I mean, taking a short pass 52 yards to the house is not something you can bank on.
That's not what I meant by that.
But I understand Alex's point. More concerning to me, there are a few factors here that I think you got to temper what happened last weekend a little bit. First of all, I think one thing we did learn is play everybody against the Bucs. So, like, play all your Saints this week. I'm serious; they look really bad. Second of all, the 4 targets is a little concerning. Mariota only threw the ball 16 total times. And that's not really something you're looking for in a PPR format. Now, that said, I think if you are playing a Titans receiver, Kendall Wright's the guy. This week, I don't know. Honestly, I think I might be steering myself away from Kendall Wright. Now, as I say that, full disclosure, I'm playing him in a half-point PPR standard league that I'm in, or, half-point PPR year-long league, not a DFS league. But that's mainly because I don't have better options. I like Wright. I'm not sure I'm using him this week. It's a tougher matchup with the Browns. I want to see Mariota throw more. I want to see what happens when he plays a real NFL team. Then I'll probably be more on board with the Titans players.
Pete missed it earlier. Like, we had this whole conversation. Like, I don't think Mariota's a good quarterback. I think he needs Kendall Wright to basically be a version of Jarvis Landry, where he throws the ball short and he runs after the catch and makes the yardage up on his own, more so than being thrown the ball further down the field.
I gotta give it up real quick to Greg in the chat right now, because Greg is basically said everything that, like, what Pete was saying was almost reading what Greg wrote about how play everybody against Tampa every week. You're right on, Greg. Spot on. That was hysterical.
Awful. The Lovie Smith cover 2 defense. He's 2-15.
Good. Let's keep it that way. I still harbor ill will against him. So we'll move on to our next receiver, Allen Robinson of the Jags, taking on Miami this weekend. DraftKings, he's sitting at 4,900, FanDuel 57. He had 1 catch for 27 yards on 6 targets. He went up against a top cover corner in the Panthers defensive backs. Which cover corner was this? Was there someone who was shadowing him all game?
Yeah, Norman was on him all game.
Okay, so he was going up against a very good cover corner who came into his own towards the end of last season. We saw when Carolina became a basically shut down defense last season. He was a big part of that. 2 of Robinson's targets were in the end zone, which is very good, what we like to see, especially at this price. So going up against the Dolphins, however, do you think Brent Grimes is going to shadow him? Is he going to see the same type of struggles?
Well,
Alex?
I mean, it all kind of comes down to Bortles. I don't know if I would play him in a cash game again like I did last week, but Allen Robinson is the go-to guy here. There's another guy from this offense that we'll talk about later that also has some probably safer value as long as he's healthy, but Allen Robinson is the guy that he wants to go to the end zone, especially with Julius Thomas out. Matchups like the one he had week 1 aren't like Brent Grimes is as good, maybe worse. I don't think he's better than Norman. And I think Miami's going to score more points than Carolina did against the Jacksonville offense, and it's going to leave to more easier defensive fronts to face for Allen Robinson. Like, he's not just going to be shadowed by Grimes all game because they're going to be – I think that Miami's going to be up early and often. So they're going to have a lot more room for Allen Robinson to do some work like he did last year, where he would get 10 targets and 8 of them would be in the fourth quarter. So I nice tourney play because he really does have a ton of upside, but right now in close games he doesn't, and we saw that in week 1.
Okay, I agree. I mean, seeing the tournament upside is definitely there, right? You see it in the target numbers, you see it in the target locations. Now we just need to see some realization from it, right? Now we need to see him going up against someone that he can actually take advantage of, and hopefully we'll see that in the upcoming weeks. I personally don't think we're going to see it this weekend, but in the upcoming weeks and later this season, it'll definitely come to fruition. Especially, I know Pete loves to mention it, and I love to mention it as well, that full point PPR on DraftKings. That's where you're going to see Allen Robinson really become valuable as the season moves on. Let's move to the next receiver. Charles Johnson going up against the Lions, taking passes from Teddy B. We've got him at 4,800 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel. He got 2 catches for 27 yards on 3 targets. Alex loves his hair.
Dude, he has the sickest haircut. It's like a blonde version of the Fresh Prince. I love it.
and he's still the apple of Teddy's eye. I won't disagree with you on that because he'd be the apple of my eye too if I only had, Mike Wallace and Cordero Patterson to throw to.
Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean,
Pete's favorite, Kyle Rudolph.
That is Pete's favorite, but Pete, why don't you
shaking my head?
When I talked about Kyle Rudolph last week, I made specific mention of how much you hate Kyle Rudolph.
I don't know if we're mentioning Kyle Rudolph in the tight ends because we're not getting there yet, but let's talk about Charles Johnson before we let Pete give us his thoughts on Kyle Rudolph again.
Okay, so my biggest problem here, guys, I've been shaking my head the whole time because
yes, you have.
If you watched last night's, I don't want any. Can I swear? Because if I could swear, I would just unleash a stream of. You know who Norv Turner is right now? You know who Norv Turner is? Norv Turner right now is Mike Martz like 5 years ago. He's the guy who used to maybe know what he was doing, but now just doesn't. He's just mailing it in. He's got the worst ideas of play calling in the world. You know what their idea? You know what they did? They didn't run a single toss. They didn't run a single sweep. They didn't run a single screen. They did a pistol or shotgun formation and handed the ball to Peterson. Here you go, run right into that lineup there. And that's all they did. Their pass plays were mediocre. Guys, Norv Turner is Mike Martz from 5 years ago. He needs to go. He needs to go. He's horrible. He is horrible. If you watch the game, did you guys watch the game? Am I wrong here? That was the worst offensive game plan I've seen called as a whole in the NFL, in 5 years since Mike Martz was gone. Norv Turner needs to be out of the NFL. That aside, I like Charles Johnson. I like his hair. If you're playing a Vikings receiver, use him. But my God, don't play any Vikings. Please don't play any Vikings.
All right. Before I try to just rebut a little bit, but
that's why you guys brought me on the show, isn't it?
Love
ridiculous rants.
This is Charles Johnson's the only player that me and Pete agreed on with the Vikings all season last year, and it was towards the end of the year because we had a big argument about Jarius Wright, who was terrible, but we did say he was the only guy that was starting to establish chemistry with Teddy early on or middle of the season. Then when Charles Johnson came out, he was actually talented and did that with Teddy. The problem with this offense right now is, along with Norv Turner, Pete, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, along with Norv Turner, this line is awful. The only starter they have left over from last year is Khalil, and I think he was rated bottom 3 centers in the entire league. So that is not a good situation to be in.
And you're calling runs up the gut? Okay,
right.
And you're calling 5 and 7 step drops instead of a screen pass? Throw a damn screen pass. How hard is it? Okay, your line sucks. You've got the best back in the world. Do something. I mean, it was miserable. Okay, all right, go ahead. Sorry.
Just my last point on this is because we're going way too deep on the Vikings, like we always wind up doing for no reason. That I feel like this situation is kind of like the Falcons last year, where they just lost lineman after lineman after lineman, and they just all season just were rotating through different guys, trying to find a fit, and it just didn't start working until maybe late in the year. But this situation, I don't see working all season long. This is bad. This is really bad.
This is really bad. Charles Johnson did almost make one really sick catch, though.
Oh, yeah, in the first quarter? Oh, my God.
The almost catch, yeah. Which would have, Almost
But
catches,
he's
by the way, scores 0 fantasy points for you.
In my leagues and in DFS, yes, they score 0 points. So we're as much as I would love to just make a show of rants, that might be something we do later in the season.
Pete
But
rants
right,
about Norv Turner. We can do a weekly show.
dude. If
Dumb,
we did
dumb shit
rant shows
Norv
last
Turner
year,
did this week. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
if we did rant shows last year, I'm pretty sure Andy Reid would be fired because we would have just been
oh god,
trashing him for hours upon hours
now
last season.
we have to
You know what
praise
though? They
him.
look pretty good. They look
We
pretty
have to
good.
Well,
praise
no,
him for
now they
week
do,
one
but
this year.
last year when we didn't understand why he wasn't throwing the ball to Kelsey,
Oh
yes,
god.
my weekly mention of Kelsey,
All
we
right.
we ate him up last year.
All right. Let's go back to our wide receivers here. We're gonna
This one's for
shift.
you. I'm not talking about James
I
Jones.
will gladly talk about my boy,
So
Jimmy
everybody who
Jam.
played Devonte Adams last week is just thoroughly upset at
Yes,
JJ,
and that includes. I think
including
he
me.
was like 40% owned in the Millie Maker, Devonte Adams, which just goes to show you that's why you don't play majority folks and you try to go contrarian in the Millie Maker, right? In those big tournaments, that's why. Because a guy like James Jones comes off the street and catches 4 balls for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. Almost had 3 touchdowns, but
Yeah,
it
that's
was
what
a
I
He's
PI
understand.
or
still a
something
really
like that. I
terrible
don't.
wideout.
I looked at
So
the target data. Why wasn't that one of the targets? I didn't see the play. What happened?
there was a penalty, so it probably didn't count.
Gotcha.
So this week he's sitting at 4,700 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel. He wasn't eligible because of when the lineups came out and everything for the Millie Maker. So at least you can look at that, right? At least you can look at it as he got those touchdowns and everything, but nobody got the points for him. So okay, I'll agree with what Alex wrote here, right? He will dominate end zone targets until Cobb's healthy and closer to 100%. Because as you saw, or at least as I saw watching the game, Rodgers and Adams still don't have that 100% mindset, right? You saw it with James Jones's back shoulder throw. You saw it with James Jones's ridiculous catch where he kind of stopped right in front of the defensive back, reached out and grabbed the ball, and then, had no yak, but it was still a catch, right? Rodgers can trust him to do that. He's going to keep targeting Adams because he has to and because Adams is going to be open. But that back shoulder throw, those deep passes, I don't think we're going to see that out of Adams just yet, especially now that James Jones is back. I fully let me rephrase that. I don't fully disagree that James Jones is a really terrible wideout, but I do somewhat disagree because my friends can tell you 2 years ago, 3 years ago when he caught those 15 touchdowns, I said it then, it was a fluke. The entire I don't know what's going on in the chat right now.
Dude, right?
I don't think I want to read it, but the entire season 2 years ago, it was a fluke, right? Because his entire career, James Jones has been plagued by drops. So we got lucky. He comes back all of a sudden, makes great catches everything thrown his way just about. So I'll take it, right? I'll take it. We needed it. We're going to need it this week coming up. So 4,700 on DraftKings. They're probably going to sit him they're going to play all over the field just like the Packers wideouts do. But he did catch his touchdown on the left side of the field. That was a back shoulder throw. I would not be surprised to see them attack that left side of the field again, knowing that Sherman's going to be on the right side. So I would not be surprised at all to see Adams kind of play decoy. James Jones line up on the left-hand side for most of the snaps this weekend. So that was my boy. Thank you, Alex, for throwing me a bone there.
You're welcome.
And let's move on to our next receiver here, Dante Moncrief for the Colts. Taking on the Jets this week. Moncrief sitting at 4,600 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel. He got 11 targets this weekend, 6 catches for 46 yards and a TD. Now, let's keep in mind that he did get a few targets while T.Y. was out, or while T.Y. was in, I should say. But I think the majority of his targets came when T.Y. was injured. Now, you make the point here of telling us Alex Revis Island still exists, in New York. Andre did look old, but again, that was a good defense. I think Andre can eat against weaker defensive backs. So
Whose defense are you calling weaker? We still
Yeah, but
have our defense is solid.
and I
I
think
said
Johnson gets Revis Island.
so.
Yeah, no, I
I
mean,
said weaker defensive back, right? Meaning a defensive back that's weaker than Revis. You guys only have one Revis,
yeah, okay.
right? So
I mean,
I think Andre can eat on.
the way I want to see it, I understand what you're saying, but the way I would
Okay.
rather see it, I think Cromartie up against Andre, who's bigger, would be better anyway, even though Revis has dominated Andre in the past, even when he was in his prime. Andre I know they played very good defense again, but he just didn't look good. So I think that you can have whoever, I mean, Cromartie's out, but whoever, either Skrine or Marcus Williams on Andre, and let Revis just just keep Moncrief just out of the game completely. You make Andre Johnson and Frank Gore beat you, and the way they look, I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, so I'm just trying to put my thoughts together as I was going through the chat. I'm sorry, I'm like
Dude, it's
so
so
distracted by what the hell was going on there. Um, so let's keep it on Moncrief real quick. Moncrief or Dorsett? Who do you think Revis is more likely to have to shadow?
First of all, I mean, look, NFL coaches are nothing if not conventional. They go with the conventional ideas most of the time. So again, I think Revis is on Andre Johnson. I actually am not 100% sure that it matters. I mean, the value play here is Moncrief. He's the value play and the volume play is Moncrief. So you take a shot, and if he gets stuck on Revis Island, well, your shot failed. I think he's a tournament play. I think he's one where you take a shot on him and see how it goes.
definitely a great tournament play, but I mean, moving on, like after this week when he's not dealing with the Jets defense, it's a great cash game play too until T.Y.'s back. But this week, not at all, because you don't know where he's going to land and how good this defense is going to look compared to how good the Bills look. Because we have pretty similar defenses, very strong lines, good linebacking core, and a solid secondary. So we'll see what happens.
All right, let's move on to our next wide receiver. He is a repeat from last week. Pete, I'll throw this guy your way. Stevie Johnson of the Chargers going into Cincy this weekend. Stevie sits at 4,200 on DraftKings, 5,700 on FanDuel. He caught all 6 of his targets for 82 yards and a touchdown. Finally has a quarterback, right? Kind of a repeat of what we said last week. Finally has a quarterback that can throw him the ball accurately. What do you think that are we going to see the same type of thing? I mean, Cincy's defense definitely in a different league than the Detroit defense, but do you think Stevie eats again?
I actually like him for the season. I think he's an excellent value. I don't know how long his price stays this low. You're right, though. The matchup is what concerns me here. Cincinnati is notably stingy, particularly to receivers and particularly at home. So this is a matchup that I'm very concerned about. That said, I could see him being a nice contrarian play. I don't expect him to be in a lot of lineups, even at his good value. I also think if I'm the Bengals, who am I taking away? I'm trying to take away Keenan Allen, right? I mean, monster game. So he would be my focus, and I could see Stevie still eating a little bit. I don't think I'll find him in too many of my lineups, but with this value, still a reasonable play.
Okay, I'm going to agree and I'm going to disagree, right? I'm going to have him in some of my lineups, not all of them. I might have a little bit of exposure to him, but I could see him definitely increasing in ownership over what he had last week just because of that performance, right? And people are going to look at Keenan Allen's performance and they're going to say, well, he's not going to do that again because that's who they're going to key on. Let me go on Stevie Johnson. So I could see his ownership percentages increasing a bit. I don't know if he's going to be majority owned, obviously, but I definitely see them going up. So I'm a little worried there personally that his numbers are going to be higher than I wish they were. But I do like him this week, especially if what I just said happens, right? If that defense does tend to key on or shadow towards Keenan because of that 800 catches that he had this past weekend.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the full upside of Stevie Johnson in this offense yet.
No, I'll agree with you there.
Because how heavily Keenan was used. And especially until Antonio Gates comes back, they have to use Keenan and they have to use Stevie in the passing game. Have to.
Which is good. Which is good for us.
So what would you say full upside is? Stevie Johnson? Like we're talking like Eddie Royal touchdown vulture, a few more catches, a little more general overall usage,
I
maybe.
think he's more consistent touchdown. I mean, if you want to call him a touchdown vulture, I think he's a more consistent touchdown vulture. I don't see him being like 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, and then, oh, I'm not going to score a touchdown. Like, I think he could get 7 touchdowns and definitely get over 1,000 yards this year and make him a solid play as long as he's this cheap from week to week. I think he has upside games, like 8 catches, like 120, 130 yards, depending on like if he gets an opportunity to catch and run. He's a very good receiver. People forgot because he was in San Francisco.
Buffalo and San Francisco, yeah.
Colin is terrible, and he showed that again last night. Even with his improvements, that he still can't throw. So Stevie Johnson is still a good wide receiver, and Rivers is the best quarterback he's played with. So I think that we don't really know what that upside is yet because we haven't really seen him in a while, and we've never seen him in this type of an offense.
All right. I'll agree with you on that count. I don't know if we're going to see his full potential this weekend, but we will see it soon. But let's move on. Next wide receivers, Terrence Williams and Cole Beasley of the Cowboys going over to Philly this weekend. Williams sitting at 4,200 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. He caught 5 of his 8 targets for 60 yards. Beasley sitting at 3,300 on DraftKings, 57 on FanDuel. Caught 4 of his 6 targets for 49 yards and lost a fumble. Witten caught 2 touchdowns with Dez out. At wide receiver, again with Dez out now up to like 12 weeks, I think I saw was like the top that I saw him being out now because of that foot. Goodbye to my first round draft pick in one of my season long leagues. Pete, who do you think is going to, I guess, perform a little bit more? Because in my eyes, let me answer the question first. In my eyes, I see Williams being more valuable with yards, but Beasley more valuable with catches.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's more or less how the breakdown goes. Here's an example of 2 guys who I'd both rather use over Stevie Johnson. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they're fairly similar prices, right? Especially on DraftKings. So I think between the 2, if I had to pick one, I'd probably use Williams just because I love the upside. He could be. He should be their number 1 receiver. Now, I know he's no Julio Jones, but look what the number 1 receiver did to Philly last week. So I like Terrence Williams a lot this week. I can definitely understand the argument for Beasley as a target guy. But if I had to use one of them, and of course we're not playing 2 Cowboys in the same lineup, I'd probably play Williams.
So there's another little addition to this that came out right after I finished making the slides. The Cowboys picked up Bryce Butler from the Raiders, who is basically, in my opinion, the Jeff Janis of Oakland, but he's now in Dallas. Dude I think he's 6'4", big, athletic, and can play. I think he just needs an opportunity, and I don't know how it's going to shake out this week. Cole Beasley should be targeted more. Terrence Williams should step up as that number 1. They should both see a bump, but I want to wait and see if Bryce Butler can be shoved into this offense immediately because I think he's the most athletic of all 3.
Okay. I think you guys kind of mentioned it all right there. I like it. I like the fact that you brought it back to Stevie. And just to clarify on the prices, again, Stevie's sitting at 4,200 on DraftKings and 5,700 on FanDuel. Williams, same price on DraftKings, but actually $600 more expensive on FanDuel. Beasley dropped down $900, so you'll get $900 savings on DraftKings. He's at $3,300, and he's at the same price as Stevie on FanDuel, $5,700.
So FanDuel, I'd probably go Johnson over Beasley. DraftKings, I think I'd play both Cowboys over Stevie.
Over Stevie.
We have to play name game on Thursday.
We will definitely play name game when we have the sheet up in front of us, and it'll be a little bit easier for us to actually attack that. Also, when we're not, an hour over time.
Yep.
Let's move on to our next receiver, Brian Quick of the Rams at the Redskins, 3,600 on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel. He was inactive this week. Tell me why, Alex. Why bother mentioning him if we don't even know if he's going to be playing?
Because he's the best receiver on this team. Just wanted to, because I think that they were trying to bring him along slowly last week because off the shoulder, but apparently news is coming out that he was a healthy scratch, which worries me. So you definitely can't play him in cash, and I guess you probably would stick away from him this week. But I just wanted to talk about him because he is hands down the best receiver on this team. Um, he's too good. Like he was great last year. His year long his stats, if you stretched him out the whole year, he was probably, I think, like a top 12 receiver last year over those 4 games before he got hurt. So this is a guy, if he gets a connection with Nick Foles early instead of them using guys like Britt Bailey and Tavon Austin, like this is a guy that could absolutely blow up for this offense.
So we saw what Jarvis Landry did against the Redskins. Are you expecting, let's say, quick plays? Are you expecting similar stats? Receiving, obviously, not returning.
Say that again. Sorry.
We saw what Jarvis Landry did against the Skins last week, right? If quick
Right.
plays,
They're
are
different
we
receivers.
expecting similar stats?
I think more yards, more yards, less catches type of game. But similar without the return touchdown. So like he could reach value, in my opinion. If he plays, he can reach value. But I mean, just because of the news with Fisher, like you can't play him this week.
No, I hear you. I'm just asking if he does play. Let's say out of nowhere, okay,
Yeah,
he plays, he's
but
in.
his upside is
He's our wide receiver 1.
yeah.
Okay. Just trying to set some sort of a floor for what you expect there.
No, I mean, think the stats he put up last year was with Sean Hill and Austin Davis. Like, you give him.
We get it. I'm not comparing him to last year because we can't do that. I'm just comparing him to the receiver from last week.
I'm not.
He's also a fantastic. I mean, look, the problem with him is very simple. Is he going to play? So if you put him in your lineup, you really have to watch the inactives. Okay. And not only that, but if he does play, is he going to get in the game? What did he do to upset the coaching staff if that's the issue? It's a really risky play, but it's a huge upside play because not a lot of people are going to have him in the lineup. So, just understand that if you play him, you're risking a goose egg, even if he's active.
Very true.
But on the other hand, it's a fantastic contrarian play, and it's a fantastic upside play.
Very true.
I mean, I wasn't trying to just compare it to last year, but, like, he was the best receiver on this team. Foles is a better quarterback than Hill and Davis. Like, he can produce more than what he did last year.
Yeah, no one's arguing that.
So
no one's arguing that. All right, we'll move on to Rashad Green, another Jacksonville wideout. Dons the screen. 3,500 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. He got 13 targets last week. Only caught 7 balls for 28 yards, but he did catch a touchdown. He was productive at FSU. You will not find 13 targets for $3,500 on DraftKings or $4,700 on FanDuel. But we kind of mentioned this earlier, right? Miami's defense, they've got Brent Grimes there. I think they've got a similar, if not, no, we'll call it similar, a similar pass rush to what Carolina, or at least defensive line, to what Carolina can bring to the table. So, Pete, are you expecting the same thing out of Rashad Green this week? Do you think we see fewer targets?
Well, I definitely don't think he repeats the 13. He might still lead the team in targets, but I don't think he gets that high. The bigger concern with Green, in my opinion, is just the offense that he's on as a whole. The matchup is not good either. The Dolphins' defense is going to be good this year, and I don't see this as a scenario. Yes, he got in the end zone, but a lot of his stuff was dink and dunk. It wasn't like he was an explosive play. Right. I don't particularly like the upside here. Even scoring a touchdown, he barely broke double digits. So I don't see this as a good play. I don't think he reaches 13 targets again. It's a real cheap play. It's another one of those high upside tournament plays, but I'm staying away.
See, I view this more as like a low upside cash if you want to get some bigger guys in your lineup because, I mean, even if he doesn't get 13 targets, I still see him getting at least 8 just because, like Mark was saying, like if Brent Grimes is on Allen early in the game, he has to throw it to somebody. There's no Julius Thomas. Right. You don't know what you're going to get from Hearns, and the running game hasn't really done anything. They're very similar defenses, so I see them attacking it similarly. So
your argument is basically like you like his floor is what I'm hearing.
Right, exactly. His floor is great, so if you really want to fit guys in and you absolutely, I have to play Brandon Cooks, but I need this much money to get him in, like, and I can play Rashad, yeah, do it for a cash game, absolutely.
I could understand that.
All right, cool.
Because
All right.
even if he doesn't do that well at 3,500, doesn't hurt you as much as a big guy not doing anything. So it's basically like playing a second defense, but hoping for upside, or at
All
least
right.
some points.
At least I was going to say something better than defense. All right, so moving on to the next wide receiver here, we've got Tyler Lockett taking on my boys up in Green Bay. DraftKings sitting at $3,400, FanDuel $5,000. He caught all 4 targets for 34 yards against the Rams this weekend, and he did take one to the house. You were absolutely right. He is the best big play threat in this offense, probably on that team, right? Not just on the offense, on that team, because you got to take special teams into account now too there. We saw what Sam Shields couldn't do against the Bears, and that was cover, right? But he was covering Alshon for most of the day. Tyler Lockett is not Alshon. If we're
Tyler
talking,
Lockett's also not going to see Sam Shields. He's not the number one guy.
I mean, he might. You don't know that.
I don't think so.
So who's Shields going to cover?
Probably stuck on Baldwin or Curse. Tyler Lockett didn't
No.
see the field the whole game.
My
No.
bad.
Shields.
Baldwin
Half
or
the
Kurtz,
snap.
Shields will be on. If Lockett's there, Shields could be on Lockett because of speed purposes. Shields runs like a 4.29.
Okay, well, I mean, you know your defense better, but
Correct me if I'm wrong,
Shields
though,
is
Mark.
the
Don't
one.
they typically put Shields on the bigger receiver, like physically larger?
Yeah.
That's why I would expect him on Curse.
So it really varies, right? Last year they would like to put House there and Tremont, obviously, but they can't do that this year because both of them are gone. I think they put Shields on Alshon this week, and they typically put him on.
The bigger
They don't.
the physically larger receiver, I thought.
They don't. I mean, you're right, but they don't do it because Shields is big, right? Shields isn't a really large guy. He's just got that speed, and he's got pretty decent. He's got great recovery speed, right? And he's got pretty good cover skills overall. But it's more
I'll
his
say
recovery
this.
speed.
I'd rather play Lockett over Green. I'll say that. I mean, better offense, more explosive player, fewer questions in general. I'd much rather play him than Green. He's going to be
he has
involved.
way more upside.
Right.
Screw you both. Let's just move on from this guy. We'll go to Brandon Coleman. Of the Saints, big boy, taking on the Bucks. 3,300 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel. He caught 4 of 7 targets for 41 yards and a touchdown. We said it. I think we touched on it earlier last week. He is a big dude. He's going to take over for Colston. We don't have Jimmy Graham in the red zone anymore, so Coleman could get these red zone looks now. Pete, answer this. Hang on. Answer this. He's sitting there at 3,300 in DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel again. For a GPP play, do you like the Breeze-Coleman combo to kind of differentiate from a lot of the guys, even in the chat here, that are thinking of a Breeze-Cooks combo?
Yeah. Yes, actually. Here's how much I like Coleman this week, and I'm dead serious about this. I'm very seriously considering starting him over both in a regular league. I'm talking here, fantasy league, year-long league, over both Kendall Wright and Devontae Adams. I'm really thinking about it. Because look. First of all, I love the matchup. As you pointed out, look, this guy. You know what he does? He scores touchdowns. I mean, that's what he did in college. That's what he's done in his first NFL game. He scores touchdowns, and you know who gives it up? The Bucks. So I think this is a good GPP play overall to stack him with Breeze. I like that. I actually think, in general, I'm a little shocked at the value that you're getting here. It goes to show how both of these sites sometimes are a little slow to catch on to trends. This is a way where the human players can beat the machines and the bots who help you with your lineups. So you can catch on to trends faster. So I like Coleman as a play. I like him as a stack with Breeze. I like him as a play by himself. I think he's probably going to be in a ton of my lineups this week as well. So to answer your question, yes, and I'll add on to that, use him a bunch. I think he's an excellent play this week. I want every part of the New Orleans passing game I can get. I want. and that includes C.J. Spiller if he comes back healthy.
Oh God, if CJ Spiller's healthy, my tournament lineup is Breeze, Spiller, Coleman, Cooks,
Yep.
and Julio.
And
And
Julio.
And Kelsey a tight end and Abdullah. Right there you go. Bam. There's your lineup.
Most
Wow.
likely, that's exactly how it's gonna go.
You just gave your lineup away.
Pretty much.
All right. That was our last wide receiver for the night. So let's move on to the final countdown. I wish I could play it. I wish I had a soundboard to play the sound clip. We're on tight ends
Can't
now.
even get the visuals together. Don't even start.
Dude.
Sound.
I told you, give me a couple weeks. We got some kinks to work out, but we're going to get them worked out. It's all good.
All right.
Tight ends, we're sitting right now. We're going to look at Tyler Eifert, the big boy from this past weekend. Bengals taking on the Chargers. DraftKings, he's sitting at 4,200 still. FanDuel 59. He caught 9 of 12 targets for $104 and 2 touchdowns. I'm laughing because I'm trying to read through the slide here. He
Won't
is
do
a
this
monster.
every week, but he will see a large share of targets from the soulless ginger. These are great player cards. You know what we need to do? We need to contact like Topps or something and see if we can just get this on the back of one of their football cards.
Yes.
Like that.
This was my favorite. This was my favorite slide to write, by the way. Like hands down.
So
DFS football cards written by Alex.
We mentioned last week, right? Eifert healthy, was a beast in the preseason. He clearly showed it last week. I'm going to give you, I don't know, what do you need? 15 seconds? I don't really think you have much else to say, Alex.
Yeah, I really don't. Like, he's a freak. Like I talked about it last week. Like his first 2 drives of last season before he got hurt, 3 catches, 34 yards. Dalton clearly wants to throw him the ball. He's more accurate in the short to intermediate route intermediate routes, and he likes to throw to big receivers. Eifert's like 6'5", and I said last week he's like a mini Greg Olsen, but more talented. So this is a guy that is awesome. And for the guy in the chat that said I lost him money, well, that's probably because you didn't listen to me and play Eifert. So sorry about it.
All right, let's move on to ASJ. He was my boy last year. He was not my boy last week, unfortunately. So I got a little burn there, but DraftKings 4,100, FanDuel 4,500, 5 of 7 targets he caught for $110 and 2 TDs. So let's actually look at the stats real quick. 5 catches, $110, 2 TDs. Eifert was 9 catches, $104, 2 TDs. They actually had very similar games, but a lot of people are only talking about Eifert this week, right? Not many people are talking about ASJ.
Well,
so
all right, because they were in completely different circumstances. I want us to just they are both very similar. They're both very big. They're both very athletic. They both have quarterbacks that really need to use them. But the way Austin got his points was end of the game. They're just getting crushed, and then they were just like, all right, Austin, let's see what you can do. And he just dominated. Whereas the game plan was to get Eifert the ball early and often, and he did.
So yes, Austin did. I mean, Eifert did get the ball early and often. That's what put him up. That was awesome, right? But Safarian Jenkins had a touchdown. He had the first touchdown, right? It was in the first quarter, and then he had another one in the second half. So they did go to him in the red zone, which was nice to see. He is that 6'7" target, again, which is also nice to see.
Well, the first one was a catch and run, which was awesome. It's what we talked about last week. I said, like, I can see him doing what Kelsey does with, like, shorter. Catch the ball middle of the field and just break it in for a touchdown. That's exactly what he did on his first one.
Yes. The second one was the floater over the middle that he was just beyond the secondary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. So do we see, let's not say 2 touchdowns again, but do we see another 7 targets, high reception rate, good chunk of yards?
Get crushed.
The Saints are... This...
All right, basically, okay, Austin Safarian Jenkins this season is going to be a more talented version of Kelvin Benjamin because they're going to be they're just killed early on in the season and early on in games. Jameis just has to throw him the ball, and he's just going to eat up fourth quarter garbage time points just like Kelvin did last year.
And you know they're going to be behind this week. It's a crutch argument, but it works.
Because this team is so bad.
And New Orleans is not exactly like they're not the world's best defense either. They can be beat via the air.
They don't really have a good cover linebackers either. So
right. As long as Mike Evans is out, I love ASJ. As long as Mike Evans is out, I think he's a almost weekly play again. As long as the price is low enough. Speaking of which, quick question: what would you guys do with a fab budget on ASJ this week? How much you blowing on them?
Sorry, I missed that. They're making fun of me on the chat.
Making fun of his Ertz
Understandable.
love. Now,
Ertz
the
and love.
question was fab budget. How much would you spend? But I guess
I don't
we
have to
can't
'cause I already
we can't
drafted.
say dollar amounts, right? You really want to more answer that in a
100%.
percentage of your total budget.
Right, right.
At least 10%, 10 to 15 probably.
That's what I'm leaning to. And I
More.
mean,
I would do more if you're in a dynasty league. If you're in a dynasty league, definitely more. That guy, he's going to be a stud for years. But for this season, 10 to 15 because he's pretty much going to lock down your tight end spot for most of the season.
Yeah.
Pete knows. I
Yeah.
have him in our fans.
Yeah.
Our,
well,
our
and I mean that right there,
team.
that answer goes to show you why you should be using him this week. First of all, this week is a great week. Everything else aside, this week Evans is likely still out. New Orleans, again, reasonably okay matchup. They're going to be throwing. Winston's still getting his sea legs, as they call it, looking for the big target. This is the week to use him, and he's still low. So, I mean, if you look at it from a non-DFS perspective, you want him anyway. And now we look at it from a only this week perspective, a DFS perspective, it just kind of makes the pot even sweeter.
Very true. All right, let's move on to our next tight end, Mr. Jordan Reed of the Redskins. They're taking on the Rams this weekend at home. DraftKings 3,700, FanDuel 5K. He caught 7 of 11 targets for 63 yards and a touchdown. No Deshaun. Let's assume he stays healthy all week, right?
That's a big if.
We saw. I absolutely agree, but we saw last year, right? And this was why we liked Reed this past week. We saw last year that Cousins loves to target the tight end. I see this as being way too low of a price for Jordan Reed. I mean, my one concern with not playing him in cash would be his opponent, the Rams. Do you agree with that, Pete? Am I on the right track there?
I think that sounds about right. I think that in general, look, you hit the nail right on the head. Cousins targets the tight end. And no Deshaun Jackson. Of course, we have already known this for a while, but no Niles Paul. I think his price is way too low. And I think he's usable in both DraftKings and FanDuel. Maybe slight nod to DK again because of the PPR format, and he's going to get the targets. It's going to be him and Garcon, and that's it. So I think I like Reed a ton this week.
Good. We're there together. I enjoy it. All right, let's move on to.
Ogletree and Laurinaitis aren't really great cover linebackers. They're more run stoppers, so he can get free, and even if they'll just tackle him. So it's perfect for IDP and regulars and Jordan Reed.
All right. Let's move on to Heath Miller of the Steelers taking on the 49ers defense, which we saw exceeded my expectations for sure last night. DraftKings sitting at 3,500, FanDuel 5,400. Miller had 8 catches on 11 targets for 84 yards. You need to depend on him when you can, and this may be the last week you can depend on him in being a consistent large factor of that offense, right? When Le'Veon comes back, he gets a lot of those shorter targets. Heath Miller doesn't completely disappear, but very, very close to it. Especially
7 of those targets would have been Le'Veon.
Especially not 11 targets, right? So
7 of them would have been Le'Veon.
Sitting at this price, though, Alex, against the San Francisco D that just outperformed expectations, are we thinking that Miller's really a safe play here?
Yeah, they gave up a lot of chunk yardage to Pete's favorite, Kyle Rudolph, and also Brett Ellison. They gave up a lot of yardage to the tight ends. Navarro Bowman looked great, but the linebackers outside of him were okay. And
Navarro Bowman looked great rushing the passer, not so good in coverage.
Completely agreed. I think that, like we said earlier, Hyde's going to take over this game. Pittsburgh can't play defense. They're going to struggle putting up points, and it's going to be the same thing again as they did against New England, just probably to a lesser extent of them getting their asses kicked. He's going to have to throw the ball to Heath to get those first downs at the end of the game. So I see him maybe matching those 11 targets. Maybe I'd probably put him in the 9 to 13 target range this week.
That's a bold prediction. I think that's high, but interesting. Okay.
I see the game script going the same way.
Okay. We'll move on to Darren Fells. I'm trying not to say Cowboys. Cardinals taking on the Bears, sitting at bare minimum punt 2,500 on DraftKings, 4,900 on FanDuel. He caught 4 or 5 targets for 82 and a touchdown. Tell me, Pete, Alex doesn't think he's going to be able to do that again in terms of 82 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
But are we going to see
one or the other? Maybe.
Are we going to see 4 or 5 targets and catches this weekend against the Bears?
Yes, I don't see why not. I actually think this guy's a phenomenal value play. Look, as much as I love them, the Bears suck. They're a year away from being even remotely respectable on defense. You know, their game plan, I thought, last week against the Packers was pretty good. It wasn't a total embarrassment. But when that's the best thing you can say about the team is that it wasn't a total embarrassment, it's bad, okay? So yeah, this week as a matchup play, as a real cheap matchup play, I could see playing him in both a tournament or, as Alex pointed out earlier, you know, these really cheap guys, they let you get the heavy hitters in. They let you get the big name guys, the expensive players in a cash game as well. So I like him in both formats. The price is right. The matchup is right. That's what it breaks down to. Do I see him repeating his 4 for 82 and a score? Probably not. But could he get something like 3 for 70, 4 for 80, maybe 2 for 50 and a score? Sure, why not? Especially against the Bears, I think he's a very good value play.
Okay. I mean, that minimum price tag is almost, you know, too low to pass up, right? Especially for someone who's going to get the most targets from that position on his team.
Yeah. He's the most talented, and he's probably the best blocker. Jermaine Gresham is done. I don't know why people were even a little bit excited about him going to Arizona. Bruce Arians doesn't love to use a tight end, but if he finds a good one that can block and is on the field, he's going to use him, like we saw with Heath Miller in Pittsburgh when he was there too.
All right, we'll go on to our final tight end, Gavin Escobar of the Cowboys, taking on the Eagles. Again, minimum prices, $2,500 on DraftKings, $4,500 on FanDuel. He caught both of his targets for 8 yards and a touchdown this past weekend against the Giants. End zone looks being wide open with Dez out. It's kind of a free-for-all right now, right? It's going to be very unpredictable as to who's going to get what. Pure punt play, pure GPP.
I actually had no idea you guys had Escobar on your list. But man, I'm glad you do. I love him this week. I really do. I think Dez going down, the guy, if you were to say who does Dez going out benefit the most, I think it's Escobar.
Yeah.
If you look at his splits when Dez is not in the lineup, and I don't have them in front of me right now, I'm trying to find them, but they're very good.
Did he have that huge game when Dez was out last year?
Like he scored like 2 touchdowns. He had like 50-plus yards. Yeah. He's a big target.
He had like 27 points on DraftKings that week. I just forgot that Dez was out that week.
I love Escobar this week. I think he's a fantastic play. I think first of all, I like the matchup as well. You've already, Philly. I think the defense is a work in progress. So yeah, I'm glad he's on the list, and I would have put him on there if you guys didn't.
I mean, he's being groomed for Witten's role, and Witten can't do it anymore. And he's a more athletic version of him.
Bigger, more athletic. Yeah.
They want to get him involved because they want him to just seamlessly take over when Witten decides to ride into the sunset, which could be sooner than people think. But he's a very good, very, very good tight end, and he just doesn't get the target numbers that he should because of Dez and Witten.
I think blocking too is an issue for him. But now that they need a pass catcher, that blocking.
Yeah, he can line up out wide. Absolutely.
Right.
All right, guys, that is it for the night. Finally,
I left out Richard Rodgers on purpose because I played him last week and he didn't do anything.
Told you that was going to be a tough.
James Jones just
go.
Screwing people over. Play Rodgers, play Devonta Adams. James Jones scores 2 touchdowns. Call up Norv.
All right. right, before we get Pete all fired up again before bedtime, let's cut it off here. Um, Follow us on Twitter
Look,
at
James
Alex.
Jones had more offensive touchdowns than the Vikings. Okay, just throwing that out there.
So did like half the tight ends in the league.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, especially live. You guys in the chat room are killing us. We'll try to capture some of those questions for the Thursday show if we can. And again, thank you very much for tuning in. Please subscribe, rate, review, comment, whatever feedback you guys can give us. We appreciate it, and we'll take it into account. Thank you guys for everything. Alex, Pete, thank you guys for calling in, and we'll see you all on Thursday. Good luck, guys.